This is Rick. Hello and welcome to Champion Individual Rights, where I always focus on the importance of digesting reality in a moral context, with the understanding that every individual should have a right to their own life, privacy, and possessions, regardless of their ethnicity or the geography upon which they preside. Today, U.S. politicians have separated themselves from the moral law, and they are behaving as if individual rights do not even exist. What can we do to turn this situation around? We have to begin by digesting reality in a moral context. All morality stems from the recognition of individual rights. If you don't have a right to your own life, then someone could just come up to you, put a gun to your head, pull the trigger, splatter your brains against the wall, and there wouldn't be anything wrong with it. While you are at a young, vulnerable age, soon after you were born, through your early childhood, a period of time that I have named the Cerebrae Vulnerabilis Tempus, the forces of government and religion move in and begin programming you as to how you are to think about things. This is a model of the formula that has been used to control the human race for thousands of years. It consists of a deranged thought process filled with contradictions, an illusionary world void of moral cognition where words often have no intrinsic meaning, leading to a state of mind where reality is not deciphered in a moral context. In regards to government, everything is propped up through the good goal fallacy, giving the illusion that their goals are so high, that they are so lofty, that politicians can do anything that they want in order to achieve their goals. In reality, the higher your goals are and the more people that they affect, all the more important that the means of obtaining your goals be good. Neither the force of government or religion wants you to understand the importance of always looking for contradictions to your perceptions. For example, in regards to the war against Iraq, many Americans were told that they hate us because we are free, which implies that there are no logical reasons for them to hate us. Many Americans simply believed as they were told without thinking for themselves, without looking for contradictions to this perception which they have been fed by U.S. politicians and the mainstream media. If our thought process is to be sound, then we have to ask ourselves, what are the contradictions to the notion that they hate us because we are free? During the 1980s, U.S. politicians gave Hussein chemical, biological, and conventional weapons. When you give money and weapons to terrorists or dictators, they can be and often are used in carrying out crimes against humanity. Also, during the sanctions placed against Iraq during the 1990s alone, an estimated 1.4 million Iraqis died, and that included 500,000 children. These facts of reality are ample reason to cause a hatred for our country, and they clearly contradict the perception that they hate us because we are free. If you are one of the many Americans who believed as you were told that they hate us because we are free, it is an indication that you are not looking for contradictions to your perceptions, which is a sure sign that you are in a state of concept manipulation. If you are not looking for contradictions to your perceptions, then, in all likelihood, your ill-conceived perceptions are going unchecked, leading you into an imaginary world where reality is not being deciphered. In regards to religion, we are all told that God is a loving and benevolent creature, and that the Holy Bible is a book of peace and virtue, filled with moral clarity. From Exodus 11:5, Moses said, "Thus says the Lord, about midnight, I am going out into the midst of Egypt, and all the firstborn in the land of Egypt shall die, from the firstborn of the Pharaoh who sits on his throne, even to the firstborn of the slave girl who is behind the millstones, all the firstborn of the cattle as well. Moreover, there shall be a great cry in all of the land of Egypt, such as there has not been before, and such as shall never be again." Today, if a brutal dictator decided to have all of the firstborn of a particular tribe killed for whatever reason, he would be considered a mass murdering psychopath. The idea that God would commit such a horrific act contradicts the notion that the Bible is a book of peace and virtue, and it also contradicts the perception that God is loving and benevolent. The Holy Bible has been rewritten by men hundreds of times, and this obvious contradiction is proof that man has contaminated the Bible with his confusion. This is proof also that the authors were either living in an imaginary world filled with contradictions, or that they were aware of the ignorance of those that could not detect this glaring contradiction. Remember to always look for contradictions to your perceptions. U.S. politicians want you living in the imaginary world filled with contradictions so that they can manipulate the way that you think about things. It states in the Ten Commandments that thou shalt not lie, steal, or kill. When many Christians not only supported the war in Iraq, but served in the military as well, it shows that they are not consistent with the values that they claim that they adhere to. It's time to start fighting and promoting for the rights of the people of the world. It must be recognized that the moral law applies to all rational creatures necessarily, to all of the human race, and that would just happen to include the political leaders of the world. The time is now to stop following in the errant footsteps of our forefathers, and for the political leaders of the world to come together and call for a ceasefire to all of the military activity taking place around the world, and that would include all of the terrorist organizations that they control. They can begin by promoting for the recognition of individual rights on a global basis with the goal of achieving world peace. It is only through our moral cognition and our ability to digest reality in a moral context that mankind can achieve its ultimatum: world peace through the recognition of individual rights on a global basis, with the understanding that every individual should have a right to their own life, privacy, and possessions, regardless of their ethnicity or the geography upon which they preside. This is the exact opposite position of the morally bankrupt New World Order nonsense that is devastating our planet today. With the threat of nuclear war in the air, now is the time for a peaceful revolution of thought.